Dehancer is widely known as the industry's #1 film emulation plugin, able to replicate some of the most popular film prints like Kodak 2383 and adapt to a wide variety of cameras. Today, I'm going to find out if Dehancer's top spot can justify its $500 price tag. Stay tuned. As we get started here, it's important that you know that there are multiple versions of the Dehancer plugin, and the one that I am testing and reviewing is their top-of-the-line, most expensive, but also most powerful plugin, known as Dehancer Pro. This is one that has all the bells and whistles. I'd say it's essentially their flagship. Now, it's also important for you to know that Dehancer did send me a license of their software to use for free in order to make this review, but I want to make it very, very clear that this video is not sponsored by Dehancer, and they don't have any say about what happens in this video. So without further ado, let's jump in. So in here, I have a bunch of different stock footage. So we've got some ARRI Alexa footage here. We have some Fujifilm, and we've got some footage from the Canon EOS R5. Now, I've also pulled in some of my own footage here, which is just me messing around, looking at the camera, and we don't have anything crazy. We've got some warmer lighting, nothing dramatic. And something that's important to note is whenever you use any kind of plugin like this, whether it is just a LUT or it's a fully fledged film emulation tool like Dehancer, it's important for you to know that a LUT won't fix bad lighting. And it's funny, this is something that they put as a disclaimer in their license and in their setup guide. So remember to always pre-plan your shots, set up your composition beforehand, and you'll end up with better results, right? So Dehancer Pro. When I enable our effects here, you can see I've actually already went in and I've graded this shot here, and all it is the one node. I read a little bit about the plugin, but I did want to keep a certain amount of the experience authentic for you guys, because most people who are downloading any kind of plugin off of the internet or purchasing, a lot of the times you're not going to know everything about something before you start using it. So I wanted to keep that in mind as I graded all of these different shots. Now we'll do a quick walkthrough of what Dehancer Pro has inside, and then I'm going to show it off a little bit so that you guys have an idea on what it can do, how to grade a shot, how to set up a little bit depending on what camera you have, and ultimately how to get the results that you want. I do want to make it clear this is not a tutorial for Dehancer Pro. This is something to help keep you informed about Dehancer's capabilities and whether or not it is worth it for you to purchase. So Dehancer gives us more drop-down menus than we even have space here. Input is where you set up your camera. Now for source, you can choose kind of what color space you're working in. Vendor is going to be your camera. So if you're using a Blackmagic design camera, which are great, then you can switch over to that. So because we're working in ARRI, we're going to go to either Alexa 35 or we're going to go to Alexa Mini. And if your exact model isn't listed over here, the plugin can still work very well as long as you choose something similar. After we have our camera set up, right, ARRI Alexa Mini shot in log C, then it comes time to make some technical adjustments. And this is making adjustments to the camera data right off the bat. So if I set my exposure back to 0, you can see our before and after. Our temperature does exactly what you would expect. To the right makes it warmer, to the left makes it cooler. You got tint, of course, right? Temperature and tint. And then you've got your defringe and your defringe radius. Now, after input, this is where you get to choose your film profile. For this grade, I went with Kodak Vision 350D, and then you can push and pull things a little bit. And this seems to act similar to temperature, where it's going to push you a little bit more to blue-green versus kind of a magenta red. You know, I didn't think this grade needed any push and pull, so I've left it. Something to point out is that all of these controls are very, very straightforward, right? You're going to drag a slider to the right, it's going to do one thing. You'll drag it to the left, it'll do something else. The only thing you need to do is try them out a couple times to see what they do. Color boost, exactly what you can expect. It's going to bump our colors up a little bit more. I think we had ours around 40 to 42, something like that. And then color separation starts at 100. And you can see that's not actually doing a ton in our scopes, right? We have another color boost here. This seems more like it's doing, like it's pulling and pushing our contrast, where it's either going to pull us up towards our whites or it's going to push us down towards our blacks. Now, you'll notice a lot of these settings are actually at 0, and that's because you're not going to need to adjust everything for each grade that you do. In film compression, we have impact, and what film compression is going to do, it's going to adjust how high your whites can go. So if I bring impact all the way to 100, and I bring white point all the way to 120, and I bring tonal range all the way to 100, you can see it's pulling everything right down. Color density doesn't do too much, but if I set these all back to normal, and then I just toggle this on and off, you can see it's pulling our highlights down just a little bit. And you can see especially on this guy's shirt here, right? Minor detail, but it gives you that full fine-tuning control that a lot of people like to have. Expand is very, very simple. You've got 2 different color modes. You've got normal and you've got luma. If I bring our black point to the left, it's going to pull all of our darks up. Bring it to the right, it's going to bring all of our darks down. And then you can expect the white point to do the exact same thing. Now, this is something I'm leaving enabled, but I'm not making any adjustments to. Finally, we get to the print. And now this is where, aside from your input and your actual film profile, that you're going to make another large change to your grade. Now we've got 5 different profiles to choose from. We have linear, Cine film log, Fujifilm, Kodak 2383, and then we've got Kodak Endura glossy paper. I ended up going with Kodak 2383 because that's the one that I liked the look of the most. The exposure on here is not going to be exactly like the exposure in our input. The input is a little bit more technical, whereas the print exposure is making changes a little bit further down in your workflow. We've got our target white, which if you're looking at in your scopes, if I bring this all the way down, you can see we're adding more color separation to our highlights, to the higher areas of our footage. And the further I slide that along to the right, the more our print is trying to white balance our footage. Now, I like the look of this grade personally, so I left target white off. Tonal contrast works similar to your normal contrast, where we're pulling our footage in slightly different directions, but you can tell it's moving slightly differently compared to our normal contrast, where when I'm pulling this, it seems to pull our gamma down to a certain level first before then stretching it away from the rest of our highlights. Whereas if I was to just go into my contrast here, we can see it just tears everything apart, right? It tears everything apart directly from the middle. So this will give you a little bit more control, especially if you want a lot of separation between your highlights and the rest of your grade, right? We can take a look at our color density, and it seems like it's pulling our midtones down a little bit. It doesn't look like it's affecting our highlights too much, or even our shadows very much, but it's just kind of making some subtle adjustments to our gamma, and you can really see it over at the edge of the bookcase here. So if you want to go for something that has a little bit more of a pale look, right, color density is going to help you out a ton there. I think I had mine boosted all the way up though. And then of course we have saturation, which is self-explanatory. After that, we've got our color head, which the color head is really, really cool. You've got your yellow to blue, your magenta to green, and your cyan to red. So those are just some fairly straightforward tint controls. So if you really want to pull your grade in one direction or the other, you have that ability. And then something else that I really, really liked about this plugin is having the control that they give you over your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights. So again, if you want to make something a little bit more dramatic, so if I bring my preserve exposure down and I just crank my highlights up, you can see I'm getting more color separation in my highlights. And let's see if we can find an area where that's happening. We'll use his shirt. There we go. So if I pull my highlights down, you can see we're almost washing it out with how it starts to look a little bit artificial. Then we pull our highlights back up and our reds get completely pulled away from our blues. Same with our midtones. And it actually looks like it's doing something a little bit more interesting here, where we can choose to either balance out our midtones, or we can choose to have them pulled more towards red or more towards blue. Right? Personally, I wanted to pull up that red a little bit more, right? And then the shadows are the same thing, but you're noticing a lot more difference with our shadows because they are affecting everything. And then with all of these, if you want to see what something looks like with your color head adjustments versus without, right? For pretty much every feature here, you can just toggle on and off. We have all of the normal things that you are used to. You've got film grain, you've got your halation, and you have your bloom. And those three things help to really, really sell the shot, aside from just having the richness and a lot of the color that you get from just using your kind of film print tools. You know, you can add on that texture and some of the more authentic effects that you would get from using actual film. Then, of course, you've got your film damage, which I kept off. You've got film breadth, gate weave, overscan, which overscan's cool. It adds on the film border. So if that's something that you're interested in for your shot or you need, right, you can add that on. You've got negatives, you've got positives. You can leave it off, whatever you like. Then you've got your vignette monitor and some other stuff that you can explore at your leisure. Now, all of these come together to take your footage from RAW to this. And it does so with a single node, which is impressive. But after doing this, I said, okay, I want to see if I can do it with some other footage. So we went over to Fujifilm and we started making another look. We've gone with something that's a little bit more higher contrast. And I think I will actually pull the blacks up just a bit here. So just a bit dark for my tastes. And then I'll bring the white point down as well. And it's easy as that. It is similar to pulling on your highlights and your shadows, but when you make the comparison, you can see that our highlights are being pulled evenly here. Whereas when you mess with your white point in the expand tab here, it's actually pulling your red, your green, and your blue at a different ratio compared to each other. So the controls are not exactly the same. So even though you look at white point and you're like, oh, that's just my highlights, it's not. So we've got ARRI, we went to Fujifilm, and then I played around a little bit with some Sony footage, and then we also have some Canon footage as well. And what I'm going to do with the Canon footage is actually go through the process of creating a grade right now so you guys can see exactly how I do it, because you can create some really cool grades in this. So right off the bat, I want to know what I'm using. I've got the Canon EOS R5 8K, and we're shooting in C-Log. So, oh, we do have the R5 as an option. Whoa, that's crazy. Then we're going to go R5, and we're going to go with C-Log 3 BT 709. Right, I'm going to disable my print and everything else here. And then I'm going to look at my waveform, and you can see we have a really interesting waveform right here. If I go to my parade, right, it looks like our blue and our green, looks like our blue highlights are really, really up there. And that's probably from the sky. Red's pulling a little bit above the green from the sand. We just take a look at our scopes. And then I'm going to bring my exposure up a bit because I do plan on crunching some of our shadows down a little bit. We're good from there. So I'm going to enable our Kodak. Now feel free to try out lots of different profiles. I have actually been having a lot of fun with the Kodak Vision 350D. Then I'm going to go to my film developer, my film compression. I'm going to enable all these. And then here's where we get to our film print. And just like with the others, I'm going to start off by going Kodak 2383. I'm going to hit enable. And I'm honestly not liking that as much as I thought I would. So let's see what else I've got here. I've got Cine and Film Log. I think for this one, we're going to go with the glossy paper. I'm liking that a lot more. I'm going to push my color density up so that I'm getting some deeper blues. I'm going to pull my tonal contrast up a little bit. And then I'm going to come back and revisit some of this stuff after I've gone through Film Developer. So I'm going to go to my color boost here. And it's important to know that you don't want to be cranking anything like this unless that's the look you're going for. I know a lot of people who are doing music videos, they end up needing a lot of those really high saturation looks. But for this particularly, I'm just going for something that looks nice. We didn't pull any references today. We just want to see what the plugin can do. I'm going to bring up my contrast boost just a bit because I don't want to crunch our darker areas over here. Let me get rid of clips. Yeah, I don't want to crunch things down there. I want to still keep a lot of my color data. One of the worst things that you can do is completely destroy your color data. And if we mess with tonal range, we're making everything a ton darker. So I'm actually going to pull my tonal range back a little bit. Bring my impact up all the way. White point, there's really nothing to worry about here, so I'm going to leave that there. And then for my expand, let's put this to normal and bring our black point down just a bit. I'm going to leave my color density and saturation alone. And then I'm going to enable the color head controls and just see what this offers me. If we focus in on these blue buildings here, that's where we're really going to see our shadows come to life. But I don't want to create anything over exaggerated. So I'm pulling my shadows down a little bit to bring out the blue, but I'm not trying to create anything that's oversaturated. For the highlights, I'm actually going to pull this up all the way, bring out a little bit more of the red, make it a nice, warm, sunny day. I want you to be able to feel the warmth in there. And then for our film grain, right, I could yank this all the way up here, but it doesn't look the most appeasing to the eyes with it yanked all the way up. So I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to bring my grain to custom actually. And I'm going to bring the size way down. Film resolution. I'm going to bring up to 85. Bring the shadows down. And this is something really interesting, is you can control the effect that your grain has in different areas and how much chroma it has as well. You know, actually, let's bring the amount down. And then let's enable our halation. And you're going to notice the halation a little bit more in the smaller details here. And here's something else that's really cool with Dehancer is they have a mask option that shows you where the halation is coming in. Now, they also have the same thing with bloom, and that's going to show you where your bloom is coming in. Now I'm going to leave my bloom enabled, even though mask mode is not showing us really anything. And then last but not least, we would have everything else that we want to add. The only one that I am going to add is our vignette. And you can pull down the feather of your vignette to see exactly how it's affecting everything, along with your aspect ratio, and then you've got your center and your size. I'm actually going to pull this up. I'm going to pull up my exposure a little bit, and we're going to feather this out. And that's taken us from this to this, which really, really cool look. If you were doing a vlog and you wanted it to have that nice film look, this would be something incredible. The last thing I did, because I wanted to put this plugin through its paces, is I pulled out the camera that you're viewing right now, which is a Canon 80D, not listed in Dehancer's available list of plugins, and I pulled it into Dehancer Pro. Now, the goal with this was to see if Dehancer could be just as flexible with lower-end cameras as it is with higher-end cameras. And so after importing my footage, all I did was backlight myself, lit one side of my face, similar to how you're seeing me right now, and then I just moved closer and further away from the camera, and now we have something that we can play with. Now, I'll show you guys how I graded this footage with Dehancer, and then I'll show you how I tried to replicate the same look that I got using Dehancer, just with the tools native in DaVinci Resolve. Now, the first thing I did was deflicker my footage, so just cleaning it up a little bit. After that, we white balanced it using our gain, pulled it a little bit more towards the blue to bring the reds down, because you can see our footage is very, very warm. And then now the footage is ready for grading. Now, I ended up pushing this in a whole bunch of different directions to see, exactly what kind of looks I could create with Dehancer. And after playing with it a little bit, this is what I ended up with. I went with something a little bit more desaturated. So we've got our before, we've got our after, and I actually really, really like how this came out. We still went with Canon for our vendor, obviously, but instead of choosing the 80D, I learned that the M50 worked best. Format, we either had neutral or we had deselect. I'm pretty sure this camera shoots in like sRGB or something super, super old. So even with minimal information and a lack of flexibility with Dehancer, you can still get some pretty impressive looks. We went with the Vision 350D again. We went with the 2383 for the print. And then we just added in our film grain, our halation, our bloom, left the film damage alone. We did end up adding a vignette. And I made some minor adjustments between our print, our expand, our film compression, our developer, and then some temperature adjustments and other stuff as well. And it ends up taking us from this to this. So even with lower end cameras, Dehancer still gives some pretty impressive results. Now, what did this look like when I tried to replicate that exact same look? Not horrible, but not great. And the way that I did this as well was very, very beginner's approach, right? I didn't try to do anything fancy. I didn't try to do any kind of layer or parallel mixing. All I did was go node after node, and here is our comparison. So with Dehancer, you can tell we've got a little bit more of a cleaner transition across colors. We've got a little bit more separation as well, I'm noting, between the lighter and darker areas. And then even in the halation, you look at Dehancer's versus mine, we end up with a bit of this odd green tint versus that nice authentic orange golden tint that we're used to in older style film. Now, for the quick and dirty approach, this is passable, but it took a lot longer to get something that is arguably not as good. And so now that we know what the plugin does and how it works, it's time to discuss whether or not it's really worth it for you. Now, starting off with the pros, we've got flexibility. It doesn't matter what camera you're using, if it's low end, high end, or if it's not even listed in their list of available cameras, Dehancer will still work with your camera. Another is the amount of control that you get when creating these grades. I haven't seen any other tool like this, not even in like, what's that other one? It's not film print or something. I haven't seen another film emulation tool that gives you the same control that Dehancer offers. And I think that's really, really important, because if you're working with a variety of different shots, you're working in extreme low and cool light versus shots where you're out in the desert and it's all highlights and red tints, Dehancer can handle both of those easily. Aside from that, you work within one node. The controls that you use, you can learn really, really fast. You're not going to worry about, oh, I need to fiddle with this a ton before I can use it. You're not going to need to worry about playing with it for a week before you actually have any grasp over the plugin and its capabilities. You could learn how to use this at a acceptable level in an afternoon, which is great because, as you know, being in post-production, time is money and you don't have any to waste. Now, as far as cons go, there's a few different things that jumped out at me right away that I think other people might also notice and will be considering when they look at the $500 price tag of Dehancer Pro. Now, like you saw before, we had more drop-down menus than we had space to scroll, which, if you have an idea what you're doing, right, maybe you've worked with film emulation before, or you're even just familiar with Resolve's color page, then that should be no problem for you. Like I said, you can learn it in an afternoon, you can figure it out. But if you're new to film emulation, or you purchase the plugin hoping that, or you're just jumping into color grading and you're like, I need a film look quick, then you might end up butchering it because you don't know how to use all of these controls properly. And a lot of people, it's funny, a lot of people think that because you have all of these controls, you need to make adjustments to all of them, which we both know that's not true. You're gonna make adjustments based on the type of grade you're going for. And you guys saw, I didn't touch half of the sliders and still got some really, really cool and cinematic results. Now, one last thing to note is that Dehancer can be a bit resource hungry. So just like with a lot of the more powerful tools in the color or the fusion page of DaVinci Resolve, something to be aware of. It's gonna pull some power. And so after looking at these, who do I think Dehancer is for? I would say Dehancer is gonna be for someone who is working with either a lot of different types of footage, or for someone who loves that film emulation look and wants to have that much control. Like, I could easily see myself using this for every IRL video. Now, if you only use the one camera, which I know is the case for a lot of people, or you work within the same color space all the time, could you create your own custom film emulation LUT or your own film emulation grade? For more experienced people, probably. But your trade-off is time. And so the final question to answer is Dehancer Pro worth the $500 price tag? If you're just getting into film and you're looking to dabble, no. Learn more about color grading, because user error and lack of knowledge of how to use the tool will keep you from using it to its full potential. But if you've been color grading for a little bit and you're looking for a tool that can save you a ton of time and get you incredible results with a ton of different cameras, and if you're making some money by producing those results, nothing wrong with that, then Dehancer might be for you. Personally, I can see myself using this and playing with this for hours. This is a really, really fun plugin. You can get some really, really good results. And yeah, that is my review of Dehancer Pro. If you have any questions on anything particular, you want to know maybe a little bit more about the software, then feel free to leave me a comment. And remember to comment down below for a chance to win a license of Dehancer Pro. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe. I'm IsaiahGrade, and I'll see you in the next one.